You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, themichigansportstruthpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, Primetime Edition on Staples Media. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Frank Vassner is out. Ed Smith, how was your week and how are you doing tonight?
Week has been so-so, up and down, so to speak, but I am feeling a little bit better. In between not just watching what Casey Mize has been doing so far, find myself getting ready to watch Senator Kamala Harris make history by accepting the vice presidential nomination that year at the Democratic National Convention. So other than that, I'm doing pretty good so far.
Awesome. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope on Instagram at EdSmith313. And Frank Vassner is out tonight. He has work complications, but follow him on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vassner. We have live coverage to provide to our audience right now as we go over another Detroit Sports Rag article from Jeff Moss in our returning TMSTP Story Vault. Plus, Moss issued a new article about Mike Valenti badgering Terry Foster. Plus, we have some Lions news and some Michigan football news. But right now, it's tied at 3 in the top of the 7th. Cishek is on the mound now for the Chicago White Sox against Jacoby Jones, a 1-2 count, and a swing and a ground ball to first. And Jose Abreu, I believe, Abreu will put the play on assisted, 1 up, 1 down. The Tigers got swept at home by the Cleveland Indians, 10-5, 3-1, and 8-5, and then they finally called up pitchers Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal and infielder Isaac Paredes. Also, outfielder Jorge Bonifacio, who recently made an error to allow the White Sox to tie the game at 3. But Matt Boyd only gave up 3 runs in 4 innings pitched, but the bullpen was bad as well on Monday. Grayson Griner flies out 2 up, 2 down, still tied at 3 top 7 at Guaranteed Rate Field in Chicago. Boyd with 9 strikeouts. Matt Boyd with 9 strikeouts in 4 innings pitched. Tarek Skubal, 2 innings pitched, 4 earned runs and 7 hits in his major league debut. Daniel Norris was awful as well, but Skubal just his debut. But Casey Mize, 7 strikeouts, and it looked like he was going to have a good outing until the defense let him down. That's not Mize's fault at all. Mize pitched a beauty. 7 strikeouts, no walks, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, including a bomb by Edwin Encarnacion in the second. But Mize rebounded nicely. He pitched very well. And there's a fly ball deep down the left field line by Isaac Paredes, but it's foul. Just about home run distance, but not too close by to that foul pole. Still tied at 3, but it's 0-2 on Isaac Paredes with 2 outs and the bases empty with Isaac Paredes. But Ed, your thoughts on Casey Mize in the past week?
Casey, well, first and foremost, on the week itself, I think it was a little bit of a return down to earth, so to speak. I know some fans were a little bit excited seeing how well they did in the first week or so, getting wins, so to speak. But you have to remember that, they were doing so against teams that had bullpens that were just as bad as theirs, if not worse. So you had the feeling that sooner or later you were going to run into better teams that were going to start smacking you. And what we've seen here, they've done that already with Cleveland. Now they're facing the White Sox, and Skubal did not it was like a compare and contrast between Screwball's debut last night and what Mize did here tonight. Screwball, excuse me. Just not a good, a bit of a weird goings overall, but either way, both pitchers, both young guys will have learning experiences as a result of this. Now, as for Mize, I will say I really liked what I saw from the kid tonight. His splitter was absolutely fantastic. I think he got at least 3 or 4 strikeouts just from that splitter alone. A lot of swings and misses as well. His stuff looks very good. He doesn't have your prototypical, rotation or of pitches that you see typically. The usual fastball, changeup, all that, curveball. No, he has a very steady diet of different pitches. He doesn't usually rely on the fastball. It's usually a splitter or usually something else. But when that splitter gets down, and especially against right-handed batters, it is absolutely nasty to see. So I liked definitely seeing what he got in terms of 7 strikeouts. There were only 4 innings, or at least 4 1/3 before he got taken out. There are still some things he has to learn.
It was 4 1/3.
4 1/3. So there's still some things he does have to learn, such as the value of getting that shutdown inning. But again, not entirely his fault. The defense did not help him out in that regard. But still, there's still some room to grow and room to improve on for the young man. But even still, I came away feeling quite impressed from what I saw. So great job, great debut by young Casey Mize.
Yeah, and I like Casey Mize's passion. He wanted to throw that first pitch, and he didn't waste any time. And he got some run support from Jamer Candelario's 3-run home run in the 5th inning. But right away, the White Sox somehow came back, but in large part thanks to those 2 errors by Grayson Griner and Jorge Bonifacio, who let that Texas League single skip past him. He kind of misread it there, took a weird bounce. But Brian Garcia on the mound now for the Tigers after the 7th inning stretch, still tied at 3. He's taking on, I believe, actually Zach Collins leading off. Collins is 1 for 2. Not to be confused with Tyler Collins, but Zach Collins. But Cisnero is going to be relieved by Brian Garcia. Now it's 2-0. That 2-seam fastball is way outside. Collins doubled in the 5th his last time up and scored a run. But C.J. Cron out for the season to have surgery on a patella tendon in his left knee, and Ivan Nova with triceps tendonitis on the 10-day IL. But very crushing blow to the Tigers' offense, Ed. Zach Collins fouls one off 2-1. Let's get to the new article from Jeff Moss, shall we? Mike Valenti's Ellen problem is the headline, so bear with me here. Moss writes, unless you have been living under a rock the last few weeks, you probably have heard the news about the Ellen DeGeneres show. 3 producers were fired from the daytime talk show on Monday after a BuzzFeed article detailed an abusive workplace on the set of one of the more popular shows on TV. A lot of the alleged misconduct on the set of Ellen's program has been vague. The star comedian didn't want people looking her in the eye. Staff was mentally abused by superiors, etc. But the details dripping out in the wake of the Ellen scandal seem to pale in comparison to revelations made by former 97.1 The Ticket host Terry Foster, talk show host Terry Foster, earlier today on his blog. As you may recall, Foster used to co-host the #1 rated sports show in Detroit, Valenti and Foster, with partner Mike Valenti. In August of 2016, Foster suffered a debilitating stroke that took him off the air for the rest of the year. He returned early in 2017 and only appeared for 3 months before retiring and accepting a buyout with the station, the radio station, that is. The decision was amicable, but we are learning now from T. Foss that the parting was anything but. Based on a large number of texts, emails, Facebook posts Moss received from his readers back in 2017 when Foster returned to the studio, it was Moss's opinion that Valenti never wanted Terry to return. He enjoyed hosting the program alone and made Foster's life miserable upon return from his near-death experience. Moss received a lot of crap like this from listeners of their show. From Andrew Skomsky, one of Moss's followers on Twitter, replying to SweaterVest13. You can follow Andrew Skomsky on Twitter at @A_Skomsky. He tweeted, happened to catch the Valenti abusing Foster show for a couple minutes. He did your Graham Couch take.
unquote. And then from Jeff Moss's first Twitter account, which has already been suspended for over 2 years now, as Brian Garcia gets another strikeout here. He fans Adam Engel, 2 up, 2 down, still tied at 3 in the bottom of the 7th. The bullpen has been helping out Casey Mize, unlike the defense. But from that Jeff Moss DSR, replying to J. Reedy 56, JRIEDY 56 on February 6, 2017, quote, "Today was the worst I've heard Valenti's ripping. Pre-stroke, he hit it with humor, said Foster was being an idiot today," unquote. In fact, I didn't buy any of the niceties that everyone was throwing around back in 2017 when Foster left. I had a couple of sources telling me that Valenti had basically run Foster out of the job. I even wrote an article about it back on April 20th, 2017, titled "Terry Foster Retires and Mike Valenti Has Blood on His Hands." I didn't have any evidence to support my theory back in 2017, but Foster all but confirmed it today in his blog. Foster wrote, quote, "I felt like an outcast and wanted to quit a week into my return. I was in a very emotional state and wondered why none of my radio partners visited me at the hospital when I needed them the most. That really bothered me. People used to ask me to call into the station just to say hello. They wanted to hear my voice. To be honest, I never wanted to be on that station again." Still tied at 3 after 7, I see. Continuing on, "I don't even want to set foot in that building. I may tell you why in a future post, but I needed to run it by one person because I feared he could get in trouble," Mike Valenti, that is. "I knew I wasn't my old self. I was still sick, but I did not want to admit it. I kept thinking that the old Terry Foster would return the next day like a raging tiger, but it never happened," unquote. Imagine working with a guy for almost 15 years and not visiting him in the hospital after a major stroke. What kind of person is Valenti to do something like that? I made Foster my personal piñata for a decade. I probably wrote 20 articles alone on his failed restaurant endeavors, but I had the decency to stop all that once he got sick. Heck, I even texted him to get better after the stroke. What did Valenti and Mike Sullivan do? They mocked him, made fun of him for being slow. Their behavior was reprehensible then and now that we know for a fact that this was causing Foster to get ill. You have to wonder what ramifications, if any, Valenti will face. Sullivan left the show recently so he can get golf balls driven off his nuts, so nothing can be done about that imbecile, which is Mike Valenti. Just read what Foster had to say about doing the show upon his return with that pair. Quote, "Instead, I got sick after every show. Although I was on a low-sodium diet, eating grilled fish and steamed pea pods just about every day, my blood pressure began boiling by the second hour of each show. My head pounded, my blood pressure spiked, my drive from the station to my house was just 16 minutes, but I was barely making it home without falling asleep. I'd take my blood pressure and read startling numbers like 192, 110, 201, 100. One time I celebrated because my blood pressure after one show was only 182, 95, unquote. If people got fired from Ellen's show for stuff that was lampooned on the Larry Sanders show 20 years ago, what happens when you discover your employees ran a stroke victim off the air? Although it doesn't seem that anyone at Entercom cares. They just hired a guy in Rico Beard to basically replace Foster 3 years after the fact, who had his own workplace bullying issues himself. When I sent 97.1 program director Jimmy Powers the following email I received from a former intern who worked with Beard back in Lansing, I received absolutely zero response. A former intern at the Spotlight Radio Network in Lansing, that is, allegedly was physically threatened by Beard and mentally abused to the point where he was supposedly suspended, and 97.1 hires this guy and refuses to address the accusation. Valenti bullies a stroke victim out of a gig, and Beard allegedly tells an unpaid kid, Chris Castellani by name, he is going to see the back of my hand. Those two seem to deserve each other. Since Powers refused to respond to the email I sent about Beard, I guess I will just forward all this to Entercom's market manager, Debbie Kenyon, and their HR manager, Rhonda Brooks. We will see if anyone at the station wants to address these issues. That's the end of this article, so just you and me, Ed. My summary is Valenti and Sullivan tortured Foster for most of his tenure at 97.1 before Foster quit, and then Valenti was alone, and now he added another new bully, Enrico Beard, who once bullied Chris Castellani. Both Valenti and Beard are awful, are Spartan homers, and are bullies at the same time. Awful human beings. Ed, give us your thoughts on that.
My reaction, first and foremost, I want to wish Terry all the best in his recovery. I know it was 4 years ago, but something like that, like a debilitating stroke, can stay with you for the rest of your life, if possible. And it's not. Granted, I've had my own criticisms of Terry in the past. I'm pretty sure he even blocked me on Twitter, basically for sharing similar sentiments or sharing the views that Moss might have had. But even still, I don't wish or would want to wish what happened to him on him or anyone else, because Terry is a man who has family that cares about him, who has friends, or at least he thought, so to speak, in terms around the radio station, friends that cared about him. I'm sure Wojo cared about him, at least considering that they worked together at the news for a while. Jamie Samuelson, may he rest in peace. I'm sure he had some, at least, gave Terry, checked on him, so to speak. So the usuals that you hear, like Jamie, Wojo, Stoney, I'm pretty sure they reached out to Terry and his family in his hour of need. But hearing about Valenti, granted, I've always had a feeling that Valenti was this, just weak person, this weak man who likes to play this tough guy persona on the air, but yet can't even take the criticism of an online Twitter profile. When's the last guy the guy sent out a tweet? You know what I mean? So hearing this, or hearing, if you want to call it allegations, sure, but hearing details of this come out, it wasn't surprising, but it was still disappointing, because at the end of the day, like Moss had mentioned, this is a guy, in terms of Valenti, you worked with Terry for so many years. He helped brought you in to the business of Southeast Michigan. Before then, you were just some loudmouth fat Spartan who got transplanted from New York. Okay, you should be thanking Terry for doing what he did to help make you relevant. Okay, so Valenti. My thoughts on him, it goes without saying. Rico Beard doesn't surprise me too. He comes off as someone who is, like Valenti, obnoxious, likes to think he is the smartest man in the room and all that. So that doesn't surprise me as well. And hearing the Castellani story, disappointing that even in modern age such as this, you see this type of reprehensible behavior taking place. And I haven't listened full stop to 97.1 in a long time. I only check in periodically to see what topics they are discussing, but it's just it doesn't surprise me to see or hear about this type of behavior, because I've heard it, so to speak, on the air. The way they want to belittle and badger people who they think are beneath them. It's sickening. And, I've always noticed with Valenti, he always wants to have someone on the show that acts like his little lapdog, his little mouthpiece. He did it with Matt Derry. He did it heavily with Sullivan, and we'll see what he does now. But yeah, him and Rico definitely deserve each other. F off, Valenti.
Yep, F off Mike Valenti and Rico Beard.
And that's gonna be my version of F Jackie.
Yeah, there you go. So it's still tied at 3, top 8, as Jamie Candelario is still at bat. Just recently fouled one off of himself. He's still okay. 3-2, 1 out, bases empty. This is his 4th at bat, 4th plate appearance. That would be. He's got 3 at bats. Goodrum is 0 for 3. 8 pitches thus far against Goodrum. Here's pitch number 9, 3-2, payoff, hooked foul. Still 3-2 on Goodrum. So my shout out. Thank goodness Terry Foster is still alive, by the way, and Chris Castellani is still doing his video blogs on Twitter at Castellani2014. That's 2014. You can follow Terry Foster, I think, just at Terry Foster now, since he no longer works at 97.1 The Ticket, 97.1 The Porn Ticket. Yeah, we remember either Evan Jenkins or Kyle Bogenschutz posting an article about a woman being naked, either a photo or a video or something like that, but that definitely had nothing to do with sports. And some of those topics have nothing to do with sports as they talk about them on the air, and that just tunes the fans out. By the way, that's been happening for like so many years, Ed.
Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of Jeff Moss and the Detroit Sports Rag, we go to our TMSTP Story Vault as Candelario strikes out swinging. Marshall gets his first strikeout. 2 up, 2 down, still tied at 3 in the top of the 8th. This is from August 10th, 2017, headlining, "Do the Lions have blackmail info on all their fans?" He writes, "This article isn't being posted in an effort to change the hearts and minds of Lions fans I am not attempting to get anyone to throw away their fandom for Detroit's pathetic NFL franchise. If I were actually trying to persuade you to burn your Lions merchandise and openly root against this historically inept organization, it wouldn't come off much different than a born-again Christian proselytizing to non-believers after a midlife conversion. You see, my decision to never give the Ford family a penny of my money towards either a ticket or a concession took 27 years, and my full Lions heel turn didn't occur until I was 42 years old. He's 45 now, by the way. So I am not here to try to convince you to abandon your hometown football team, as that decision has to come to every individual in due time. And I totally understand how hard it is to separate yourself from a local pro team that you grew up supporting, especially considering there are memories you have shared with your father as a child. Making the decision to pack it in is like a death of a loved one or a loss of an appendage. And of course, there's the carrot that all Lions fans continue to chase whenever I tell them that not only do I want the franchise to fail, but that I openly root for them to lose in the most embarrassing way possible. Quote, well, I want to be there when they finally win a Super Bowl, unquote. Back in 2015, I did the arithmetic and determined that the Lions had put me through way too much consternation for an unlikely championship to be some sort of payoff for wadding through this stuff for decades. I've made the comparison many times, but at some point, a battered spouse decides enough is enough and walks out that door. Is it worth waiting around for the anniversary present of a new Asher cut, 4-carat diamond ring, and a cruise around the world if you have to endure 30 years of being called derogatory names? Especially since there is no guarantee those presents will be forthcoming before you croak. As the second act of the Phantom of the Opera suggests, there is a point of no return. That final threshold was passed after the team called the cops on me for my antics on this website. I've watched that bridge burn from a distance ever since. No, I am not trying to convince you of anything at all other than to have some self-awareness regarding the wretched organization you blindly support. I am not talking about all Lions fans, as there are some maltreated followers who realize the obvious, but instead the ones who get excited when the team's schedule is announced, or when the unofficial team depth chart is released like it was yesterday. These fans who have never even reached third base with their favorite NFL team, who always take team management's side whenever there's any dispute between a player and the Ford family henchmen. Barry Sanders retired? What a quitter, they said. Dude didn't even have the courtesy to tell the team before the eve of training camp. Let's boo him whenever he's courtside at a Pistons game and they flash him on the Palace Jumbotron. Calvin Johnson, what an ingrate, they said. How dare he get pissed the Lions wanted $1 million back from him, even though he almost no other NFL teams would treat a future Hall of Famer like that. The nerve of this guy to risk life and limb, and then to have the audacity to mention that all of the losing got to him over the years. And now he is showing up at Miami and Oakland practices. Dolphins and Raiders, by the way. The Raiders are, by the way, now the Las Vegas Raiders. What a traitor. DeAndre Levy filed an injury grievance against the team looking to collect $1.75 million in salary. The Lions were 100% correct in dumping that injured social justice warrior big mouth after he signed that juicy new contract and had no desire to earn his keep. So what if he has no cartilage in his knee and that contracted parasite from back in Chile, may I add, and will probably live the rest of his life in a debilitated state? Hey, Mrs. Ford, can I clean these sunglasses for you and change your Depends while we're at it? Like, can you imagine the hill these lunatics would not die on if this team had actually won a postseason game in the last 26 years, or if the Lions had ever been to a Super Bowl, or if they had won a title since the Civil Rights Act passed Congress? Yeah, there are fans bashing those players on Twitter. And trust me, this is a minuscule sampling of the Levy and Calvin bashing from the Lions fans on the internet. We're going to pause right here as Jose Abreu takes Gregory Soto deep for a solo home run down the right field line, and the White Sox lead the Tigers again 4-3. So Jose Cisnero was great, and so was Brian Garcia. But Gregory Soto, with a 0.00 ERA going into this series in Chicago, Ed, imploded last night or the night before, and now he gives up a go-ahead home run to Jose Abreu, and the Tigers are behind again.
He was put in to bring back his confidence, but yeah, he has not performed well as of late.
No, and that cost the Tigers at least a tie, but there are no ties in Major League Baseball. Continuing on here, I could post this stuff for days if I desired. Now, at this point, you folks may be suggesting that good old Joff misses cherry-picking these comments. that these opinions are from the moronic inebriated masses. Well, that's not the case. Delusional Stockholm Syndrome Lions fans come in all shapes, sizes, and forms, including various educational and socioeconomic backgrounds. Take, for example, the case of Scott Warhite. This psychotic Ford family apologist graduated law school, passed the bar exam, and is a clerk for federal Judge Matthew Laitman, a pretty prestigious gig working for a lifetime judicial appointee. This dude has zero excuse for blindly supporting this organization that has shockingly won only one playoff game over the last 60 years. Make that now one playoff win in 64 years coming up. But let's take a look at some of his greatest hit tweets. How about the ones where he claims he still holds a grudge against Barry Sanders, even though this asshat Warhite actually lived through the decade after number 20, Barry Sanders, rightfully walked away from Fredo Corleone Sr. and his band of imbeciles. He is still better at the greatest Detroit Lion ever, but do you know who Warhite constantly went to bat for? Tom Luan. He coddled Tom Luan, the Ford family, and Eric Ebron on Twitter, and he posted pictures of himself and his woman planning a honeymoon around a Lions game at Ford Field. I can't even. At this point, I think I hate the fans of this squad more than the team itself. Have some dignity. How about a little self-respect? I know a moron who actually called Stoney and Wojo on 97 won the ticket from his honeymoon, and Warhite makes that guy look as suave as Frank Sinatra. 2 outs at the bottom of the 8th, still 4-3 White Sox. Bases empty. And this is coming from a guy who literally changed his wedding date so as to not interfere with the Red Wings Stanley Cup game versus the Penguins, either in 2008 or 2009, whichever. But at least the team has given me the money shot 4 times during my lifetime. According to Warhite's Twitter bio, he survived cancer. The big C. Can you imagine dealing with that and coming out of it with a rededication to your Lions fandom? Maybe I'll crash this couple's 2-year anniversary. I hear they are having it at the tap room at MGM during one of Dan Miller's Monday postgame shows. Josh Rosen can't enter the NFL soon enough. 0-2 the count. This game's pretty much almost over now, but to sum it all up, there have been tons of Lions fans, Ed, always drinking the Kool-Aid for their team, as they always do, while not even caring about players such as Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, and DeAndre Levy. Encarnacion at bat, by the way, against Soto. Warhite, for example, makes this whole mosh pit of the Lions fan base even worse by coddling the Ford family, Tom Luan, and Eric Ebron. This is totally ridiculous. They're all a bunch of lemmings, and Warhite is one of them. Ed, take the floor as Edwin Encarnacion hits his second home run of the game, making it 5-3 White Sox.
Yeah, this one's over.
Yep. So, Ed, give us your thoughts on Lions fans and stuff. Go ahead.
Well, Lions fans, and trust me, I myself am guilty of suffering from this from time to time. I am of the belief that we have a small case of Stockholm Syndrome where we know full well what we're getting into, rooting for this team year after year after year after year, and how they keep doing it to us year after year after year after year, but yet we keep going back to them year after year after year. Because they're our only pro football team. You know, they're the team that we grew up watching, that our parents and grandparents instilled and passed down on to us, watched with us. We've lived, bled, cried, and died with this team. And we've seen also the great players that come out, such as Barry, such as Calvin, Sue, Stafford, Robert Porcher, Herman Moore, Johnny Morton. The list goes on and on. There have been, despite the surface, the Lions have had some damn good players come through that organization throughout the years. All of them have been wasted in terms of their career and their prime, and whether it be horrific coaching, which is spurred on and enabled by horrific management, which is then enabled and spurred on by horrific ownership. You notice the constant vicious cycle that we're seeing, right? And it didn't just get there. It's been that way for a long, long time. Okay, it wasn't just going to stop the moment Bill Ford Sr. died. Okay, as long as I've stated this before, as long as the Ford family has control of this team, we're not going to see the true improvements or the true changes that we as fans want and deserve to see. Think about what the Red Sox, what they were able to do to finally get over that hump. Bringing in a guy like a Theo Epstein and let him be hands-on. I think what the Lions are they're doing the opposite with the Ford family, from where they're coming from. Yeah, they brought in Bob Quinn, but what has he done? Or what have you done to make sure he stays on point? It's just nothing but dysfunction and ineptitude that is a constant theme regards to the Lions and by extension, the Ford family's ownership and terms of tenure of owning this franchise. So, it's hard to see that coming now as long as this family still holds control of this team.
Yeah, and all Bob Quinn has done is just make a mockery out of the New England Patriots, by the way, which are still coached under head coach Bill Belichick, even with or without Tom Brady, who is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, by the way. And the Lions have plummeted ever since Bob Quinn hired Matt Patricia and his staff. Darrell Bevel, just not a smart offensive coordinator, by the way. I know he has playoff experience, but still.
I'm going to give you a slight correction, not Taylor. They've been plummeting since 1957.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they used to be average under Jim Caldwell. Not great. They finished like 9-7 and 7-9 and stuff. But since Jim Caldwell was fired, 1957. That is historically. But from a present time standpoint, from Caldwell to Patricia, the Lions went 6-10 in 2018 and 3-12-1 in 2019, which is even worse than 6-10. And all that talent that they signed, even Danny Amendola, Jesse James, T.J. Hawkinson, whose ankle is still not 100% healthy, by the way, for him to play, by the way, as we segue to Lions news. All that talent, by the way, being wasted by dumb coaching by Matt Patricia, Darrell Bevel, and Paul Pasqualoni, their defensive coordinator. Just inept coaching continues, whether it be Patricia, Caldwell, Schwartz, Jim Schwartz, and whoever the head coach has been for those Lions ever since 1957, even Wayne Fontes, even though he won one playoff game in 1991 or 1992 or whatever. But that's the only playoff game they've won in like 63 plus years, now going on 64 if the Lions don't make the postseason, which is actually likely. So we had at the top of the ninth, Jonathan Scope leads off against Colomb, the closer for the White Sox. 1-2 the count. Here's the pitch, just outside. Not quite high enough for a ball, but outside enough for a ball. It's now 2 balls, 2 strikes on Jonathan Scope. Top half of the ninth inning just getting underway. But yeah, like you said, Ed, just this one's pretty much over with. It's 5-3. Gregory Soto gives up 2 solo shots. One by Jose Abreu and then the other by Edwin Encarnacion, who now has 2 home runs. The first one off of Casey Mize. It was a bomb down the left field line, but I thought that was probably a fluke. I know every pitcher makes mistakes. Even Mize did a few, but he pitched a beauty. Again, 7 strikeouts, no walks, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, and that's the line as Scope flies out to left. Eloy Jimenez makes the catch, 1 up, 1 down. But again, the point is, from a present time standpoint, from Caldwell to Patricia, the Lions have plummeted from average back to suckitude again. It's just the ineptitude, Ed. And by the way, the Lions have signed another running back, Jonathan Williams, from the Indianapolis Colts. He seems young. 329 yards and 2 career touchdowns, career-wise. Last year, 235 and a score with the Colts. But he seems young, but we're going to do a What's Your Grade segment anyway as Reyes takes a strike. Ed, what's your grade on Jonathan Williams?
They need it for depth purposes. You can never have enough running backs. I don't see this being a home run by any stretch. Obviously they took care of what they needed to take care of by getting DeAndre Swift, pair of Kerryon Johnson. But you can never have enough running backs in this day and age of the league. So for that, I give it a middling C+. They do what they need to do, and you got a body in.
My grade, exactly. So, by the way, another injury report. Former Ohio State defensive tackle Jashon Cornell with the Lions left yesterday's practice on a cart with a fairly serious lower left leg injury that he suffered during a one-on-one drill, matching up offensive and defensive linemen, according to head coach Matt Patricia, who told ESPN's Michael Rothstein on ESPN.com and the ESPN mobile app, by the way. So the Lions lose yet another defensive tackle. They have a good secondary defense, by the way. Jeff Okuda, Desmond Trufant, Tracy Walker, Justin Coleman, and others. But their defensive line just needs help, Ed.
Yeah. No, obviously. I would have loved to seen that being paid attention to more. They did give Trey Flowers last year, which was nice, but you still need more than that. Snacks Harrison was a massive disappointment. So you still need to find a way to plug that up along the nose. I did like what you were able to do with the secondary, but I wouldn't have minded. This is why I kept bringing up Isaiah Simmons as a possibility, because he's a guy I think or felt you could plug in at any spot on the defense, including the defensive line on certain situations where you need to get a stop or need to cause pressure or get a sack, whatever. But still, very much loved the Okudah pick. I think it's going to be a great pick for them down the line. But yeah, this team's glaring weakness is glaring for obvious reasons.
Yep, and Christian Stewart flies out to end the game. The White Sox beat the Tigers 5-3 and complete the 3-game sweep at Guaranteed Rate Field. So the Tigers now fall to 5-3 is the final score. The Tigers now already under 500. The White Sox are 13-11. The Tigers actually have one more game to go. It's a 4-game set, as I correct my mistake. It's not a 3-game set. They have one more game tomorrow at 2:10 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be Spencer Turnbull on the mound against Giolotto for the Chicago White Sox. Lucas Giolotto, who was 1-2 with a 4.88 ERA, a 1.41 WHIP. Spencer Turnbull has been decent thus far, but his last outing, he couldn't even make it through the 5th inning, just like many other Tigers pitchers. Ed, your thoughts?
Excuse me. Again, really liked what I saw from Mize tonight. Will only be a lesson in terms of experience and growing pains as well. The bullpen being bad, that doesn't surprise me. I've seen that same sentence being said for the past 20 plus years now in terms of watching this team, so that doesn't surprise me. Offense coming up, giving some run support from Mize was good. Squandering everything else, not good.
No. Too many long balls, according to Fox Sports Detroit's graphics crew. Mize only gave up one of them. The Tigers pitching staff gave up 3 of them. 2 of them given up by Gregory Soto, as I mentioned before, one by Jose Abreu and one by Edwin Encarnacion. Those were critical for the White Sox, and it cost the Tigers the game. It was tied at 3 going into the 8th inning when Gregory Soto gave up those 2 home runs. So, yeah.
Back in the day, those three home runs, if done by the Tigers, would have gotten you a curly fry at Arby's.
Yeah. Had they been sponsoring the White Sox on Comcast Sports Net, by the way, had they done the same thing, either curly fries or Arby's mozzarella sticks, I like them better. Mozz sticks are one of my favorite foods. Yes, I remember now. Yeah, not only pizza, but mozzarella sticks. But anyway, Michigan Wolverines football news. Standout offensive tackle Jalen Mayfield has declared for the NFL draft by foregoing the rest of his 3 academic years at the University of Michigan. So, Ed, it'll be interesting to see. We had an NFL draft earlier this year, back in April. Now this is August, so I believe next year he'll probably just skip the Big Ten season, which is probably going to be aiming for January, by the way, and that's kind of interesting to see in this timeline scenario. Ed, give us your thoughts on Jalen Mayfield, what team he's going to play for when he gets drafted.
Well, it depends. Obviously, it all depends on the luck of the draw, where he ends up, how highly rated he is as a prospect, but on all those big boards. As for his decision to leave, doesn't really surprise me too much, given the fact this is immediately in the fallout of Big Ten Conference putting the kibosh on all fall sports. So I guess for some reason Mayfield thought, okay, well, I guess that's my cue to go. For some odd reason, whatever it was, when you have 3 full years of eligibility left, you would think you would do whatever you can to make sure to use those years to as much great effect as you possibly can. I think Mayfield left a lot on the table by leaving this early. I think he does have the size and the potential to be a quality and productive tackle in the NFL, but I don't know. It was just a decision that really bothers me a little bit. I understand the want and the need to play football so very, very badly and so desperately. And I guess Harbaugh was cool with his decisions. But I don't know, man. I think knowing the situation, the climate we're in right now, and knowing that the NFL, to the best of my and our or anyone else's knowledge, has not released or shared a concrete and detailed and specific plan on how to contain all of this, similar to what the NHL and what the NBA has and is doing now. Knowing that, you're going to willingly put yourself into that situation, potentially in harm's danger. Think about this: you could be placed on the IR without even having to play a single snap of practice, just because you may catch this virus. So again, I hope for his safety first and foremost. I wish him the best with his career, but I'm quite perplexed by this decision, to be honest with you.
Yep. So the Michigan Wolverines will have to fill in his cleats with another offensive tackle heading into probably January. But we'll keep our eyes posted on when the college football season may start in terms of the coronavirus crisis, which affects sports, by the way. And we have some time to go over a couple other coronavirus headlines. Starting with the NFL, it is starting to restrict sideline access. It has banned cheerleaders, mascots, reporters, and multiple other groups from the sidelines this season for each and every game. They are also in talks for a potential bubble postseason, by the way, just like the NHL and the NBA are doing. And then in college basketball, they're also looking at bubble options. And Orlando is the first bubble to pop up to emerge as a possible setting for a multiple early season tournaments in a bubble-type setting. That also coming from Michael Rothstein of ESPN. Ed, give us your thoughts on the NFL and college basketball headlines in terms of the coronavirus.
Steps are steps regardless. It's nice to hear that, again, a plan is being brought out. I wish we had seen this more earlier, especially in terms of what we saw at the very least baseball, the MLB, their season getting threatened to be shut down even before barely just getting started in terms of many outbreaks regarding with certain teams, the Miami Marlins specifically. That type of potential scenario was always out there in the open, so to speak. And I think what the NFL is trying to do is try to get a head start and try to curtail that as much as humanly possible. So, again, it's better than nothing, and we got to see what they do, what their next phase is from here on out.
Yep. You got any UFC and WWE coronavirus headlines to report, by the way, since we still have some time here?
To the best of my knowledge, I have not seen any big details regarding COVID in terms of UFC popping up as of late, which speaks to how well they've done in terms of containing this and still putting on events in the midst of this pandemic. In terms of the WWE, I believe they are slowly, now this may be a test subject, so to speak, but apparently they are going to be shifting more and more towards live programming. For the past month or so, they've been doing tape shows at the Performance Center down near in Orlando. And I believe starting with this Friday on SmackDown and then for this Sunday's SummerSlam pay-per-view event, they will be moving to the Amway Center in Tampa, where the Lightning plays. So WWE obviously, once it's going on, want to step and move forward with their next phase of getting back as close to normal as possibly can, now moving on to bigger arenas.
Yep, the Amway Center in Tampa. Nice. So, by the way, NHL free agency is coming up in October, just about 2 months away. So, hopefully the Red Wings get rid of Jimmy Howard. He already played the last year of his, he already played his previous 1 year contract. So, and he just did, his numbers were just flat out terrible. Jonathan Bernier just simply outplayed him the whole season, all season long. Jimmy Howard probably is likely done, maybe with his career, unless another team actually picks him up and sends him down to the minors. So give us your thoughts on that.
Well, that's kind of sad to hear and sad to say, because you know me, I've always been the most ardent of defenders of Jimmy Howard, whether it be to you or to anyone else, online, on air, whatever the case may be. But even I can admit, things just didn't work out. Things just were not able to get done. The closest we got was 2013, where we had the 3-1 lead on the Blackhawks, blew that, lost in Game 7 in overtime, and it's been downhill ever since. So that was as close as we were going to get, and
seeing this come to this point, disappointing because I always had high hopes for Jimmy, but things just didn't work out.
Right, and Jimmy Howard didn't even prove himself.
Unfortunately, no.
No, absolutely not. So it is now time for our closing statement segment. Ed, I'll give you 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
I want to reiterate, going back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of the Terry Foster story that we talked about earlier. This needs to be a reminder, at least as if it didn't need to be, of what we seem to be missing and lacking, not just in the workplace, not just with daily commutes, but just in general, in our own personal bubble, if you want to call it that. The most common need for decency and empathy seems to be missing and lacking in all sorts, in all areas, whether it be sports, radio, whatever, politics, entertainment, whatever. And it's very troubling, very alarming. And what I would advocate is more understanding, more clear thought, and more listening rather than reaction. Because I think people are doing far too much reacting than they are listening. And if you listen more actions will be taken, more actions will be done, and things will get better as a result. So my closing thoughts would be in terms of, again, in regards to that issue, especially if people are sick or they're hurt or they need someone to talk to, listen to them. See what's going on with them. See what's wrong. Don't abuse them. Don't manipulate. Don't take advantage of them, because it makes you come off look like an absolute piece of you-know-what. So, again, we need more listening. Listen first, react later.
Exactly. My closing statement, my shout-out goes to Terry Foster and Chris Castellani. Hope they're listening out there and later archived on Spreaker. As far as the Tigers are concerned, Casey Mize, he's going to be a star one day in the majors. He's going to take some time to develop, but his 7 strikeouts proved us something. So that's my closing statement. Ed, excellent job as always. I'll talk to you and Frank next week.
Absolutely. Now I'm about to go off and watch Kamala Harris now. Bye-bye, y'all.
All right. Yep. See ya. Yes, and we'll be back next week. Brett Smith, and on behalf of Frank Vasner being absent, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit him with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.